The church was silent. 300 people held their breath. They were waiting for me. I stood there in a custom silk gown. The thing cost more than my first car. My mother had designed it. My father looked impossibly proud. Ethan was beaming at me. His eyes were too bright. He was practically vibrating with anticipation. He was not anticipating the vows. He was anticipating the wire transfer, the massive six-figure wedding gift my family had promised. It was supposed to clear his secret debts. "Do you, May, take this man, Ethan, to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the minister asked. It was the quietest moment of my life. My heart was a frozen stone in my chest. I looked directly into Ethan's greedy, handsome face. He winked at me. A final, arrogant wink. I didn't answer the minister. I nodded once to my cousin. Leo was hidden in the back. He was the family lawyer. Leo was also the only person who knew my real plan. A loud electronic click echoed through the massive sanctuary. The lights dimmed slightly. Then, a huge high-definition image flashed onto the white stone wall behind the minister. It was projected from the balcony. It was a PowerPoint slide, crisp and professional. The title was centered: Ethan, Wexler, Fraudulent, Diversification, and Debt Structure. Chaos erupted immediately. My mother gasped so loud it hurt my ears. Ethan's smile evaporated. It was replaced by pure, terrified recognition. The minister just stood there, speechless. The first slide showed a detailed spreadsheet. It listed 9 different high-interest loans. They totaled $875,000. Each one was signed by Ethan. Each one was defaulted. A red flashing text box read, "Loan shark contacts pending immediate repayment." I finally spoke. My voice was calm. It was the calmest I had ever been. "No, minister," I said clearly. The mic picked up every syllable. "I don't, because this man is not here for love. He is here for a bailout." Ethan lurched toward me. His face was blotchy red. "May, what the hell is this? Turn it off." I shook my head slowly. I was not May the obedient daughter anymore. I was stone cold. I had waited months for this moment. This was my performance. "But let me back up," I said into the microphone. "You need the context for this specific level of betrayal." My parents moved here from Shanghai decades ago. They built a massive textile importing business. It was built on grit and long hours. They wanted me to have the perfect life. That meant perfect grades and the perfect partner. My parents are traditional. They are loving but traditional. Everything revolved around face and status. Their pride was everything. My PhD from Wharton was not enough. I needed to marry well. I needed to marry white, successful, and stable. That last part was the joke. I met Ethan at a networking event. He was exactly what my parents wanted. He was tall and blonde. He had a great jawline. He was a smooth operator. He said he was launching a VC fund. He talked about disruptive tech, an early-stage valuation. I was 26. I was deeply focused on my dissertation. My parents loved him instantly. They saw a future son-in-law. They saw a great future for their textile legacy. It was a fantasy they bought into completely. He was charming and attentive. He remembered tiny details. He knew how to play the dutiful future son. He complimented my mother's jade jewelry. He brought my father rare scotch. He played the part perfectly. I convinced myself I loved him. The whole thing moved too fast. We dated 6 months. He proposed during a trip to the Cayman Islands. My parents were ecstatic. They insisted on a massive wedding. It had to be the biggest wedding of the year. The wedding planning became a full-time job. My mother controlled every detail. The venue was a historical church downtown. The reception was booked at the city's most exclusive hotel ballroom. The total cost spiraled past $400,000. My parents paid for everything. That was their honor. Ethan seemed overly concerned with one specific detail: the wedding gift. In my family's tradition, the groom's family usually provided a dowry. Since Ethan's parents were simple people, his words, my family decided to flip the script. They would gift the couple a huge sum to invest. It was a show of support. It was a test. Ethan kept bringing it up. Is the gift finalized? When does the transfer happen? Shouldn't we get that settled before the ceremony? For tax purposes. He made me uncomfortable. I was trying to finish my dissertation. I told myself he was just financially savvy. I told myself he was excited to start our future. I ignored the tight, sick knot in my stomach. I was lying to myself. I really was. I was choosing face over instinct. I hated myself for it. The wedding stress was not normal. It was a constant state of panic. Ethan was the source. He became jumpy and secretive. He was glued to his phone all the time. He kept the screen turned away from me. I tried to ask him about his fund. He gave vague, evasive answers. He would use jargon. He talked about non-disclosure agreements. He talked about massive liability issues. It sounded impressive. It sounded like garbage. The market is tight right now, honey, he'd say. I need to focus on securing our base capital. That was code for, I have no job. He was constantly borrowing money from me. Tiny amounts at first. $50 for parking, $200 for a dinner with an investor. Then the amounts grew. He needed $3,000 for urgent legal fees. He was vague about the case. I am a finance PhD student. I understand due diligence. My family's business depended on it. I started checking his public records. I couldn't find anything substantial about his VC fund. It seemed to exist only on a single slick website, a website he had probably built himself. I noticed his car was gone sometimes. He would say he was at the gym, but his gym bag was still sitting in the closet. I started paying attention to his stories. They never quite lined up. There were always 3 different versions of the same business meeting. Then there was Chloe. She was one of my bridesmaids. She worked in commercial real estate. She was painfully insecure and always desperate for attention. She latched onto Ethan quickly. Ethan says she was a valuable networking resource. They were always sending texts back and forth. They claimed it was about finding a new office space for his fund. I saw them giggling once in a corner at a tasting dinner. I felt a cold dread settle deep in my bones. I tried to talk to my mother. She shut me down instantly. "Mai, you are being hysterical. You are marrying a good man. This is stress from the dissertation. Focus on the wedding. You need to focus on your face." I couldn't talk to anyone. I felt trapped inside the massive, expensive machine of the wedding. It was moving too fast to stop. I had already sent out the invitations. My dress was fitted. I felt like a willing victim being led to sacrifice. But I am not a victim. I am resourceful. I finally reached out to my cousin, Leo. Leo is 10 years older. He is a partner at my father's corporate law firm. I told him my concerns. I needed help with due diligence. I needed someone to look past the charming facade. Leo is ruthless. He is the best in the city. He just said one thing: send me everything you have. Leo worked fast. Too fast. He had access to every private database. He knew every trick. He called me exactly 3 weeks before the wedding. He sounded grim. "May, sit down," he said. His voice was low and steady. "It's worse than we thought. He's not just unemployed, he's a professional mark. Ethan had been running the same scam for 5 years. He targeted daughters of wealthy traditional families. He went after specific cultural groups. He played the financially astute gentleman. He got engaged, waited for the big gift, and disappeared. He had 3 previous failed engagements, all under different pretexts. The worst part was the debt. Leo had tracked his creditors. Ethan owed a significant sum to a legitimate bank, but he also owed an astronomical amount to the wrong kind of people who didn't use contracts or courts. Leo sent me a file. It contained pictures of Ethan's burner phone contents. He had somehow cloned it. The texts were shocking. They were not with an investor. They were with Chloe, my bridesmaid. They were planning to run away together immediately after the wedding gift was secured. Ethan to Chloe, just hold on. The moment the wire hits, we vanish. We'll be on the yacht by Tuesday. Her family can deal with the loan sharks. Chloe to Ethan. I hate wearing this stupid pink dress for her. Make sure you get the full amount. I want the penthouse in Miami. The bile rose in my throat. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the absolute cold disregard for my life. They were going to leave me to handle the consequences. The loan sharks were going to come for my family's money. They were going to damage my father's reputation. They were going to destroy our face. I felt a blinding rage. It was not the weeping, sad kind of rage. It was a precise, calculated anger. I was not going to let this scam artist ruin my life. I was not going to let him turn me into a punchline. I was not going to give him the six-figure check. I did the one thing I was trained to do. I analyzed the problem. I minimized the risk. I maximized the yield. My father's corporate motto flashed in my head. Hit them where it hurts the most, the wallet and the reputation. I stood up. I wiped my eyes once. My tears were done. I called Leo back. I told him my plan. He listened quietly. Me. This is reckless, he finally said. It's spectacular, but reckless. No, I corrected him. This is a hostile takeover. I want him ruined. I want him arrested. I want the entire church to watch it happen. My transformation was complete. I became the perfect, docile bride. Ethan noticed the change. I stopped questioning him. I stopped looking at his phone. I was all smiles and compliance. See, baby, he said, kissing me on the forehead. I told you the stress would pass. You look so much calmer now. He was relaxing. He was letting his guard down. That was my first victory. I spent the next 2 weeks working with Leo. I was already the executor of my family's trust. I used that power. We drafted legal documents. My family's gift was now structured as an immediate annulment insurance policy. It was non-transferable, only released upon successful, binding contract completion. The key was the annulment. We drafted a complete, signed, and notarized request for annulment. It was based on financial fraud and duress. I pre-signed my part. Leo, as a lawyer, had it pre-stamped. We also put in a clause with the venue. The wedding was going to be televised. Not officially, but all my mother's friends would post it. I had Leo rig up a small, powerful digital projector. It was hidden in the choir loft. It was connected to my phone, which would be in the back with Leo. My bridesmaids were still in the dark. Chloe was still texting Ethan. I acted extra sweet to her. Chloe, you're the best. You keep Ethan so calm. She ate it up. The hypocrisy was thick enough to choke on. Leo and I went through the entire script. We calculated the timing. The moment the minister asked for the final vows, that was a window. No one could stop the process once we got to that point. The guests were seated. The money was waiting. The camera was recording. I had a private conversation with my father. I didn't tell him the details. I couldn't risk him losing his face publicly before the reveal. I just told him, Dad, I have evidence. Ethan is not who he says he is. I need you to trust me. Do not transfer the gift until I give the signal, not a minute before. He looked at me for a long time. He saw the fire in my eyes. He saw the determination. He didn't see the panicked girl anymore. He saw the corporate shark he trained. May, he said slowly, I trust your intelligence. Do what you must. That was the only approval I needed. The whole setup was perfect. It was a surgical operation. The trap was set. Now I just needed to walk down the aisle. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm. I saw Ethan's predatory smile. He saw dollar signs. I saw a cockroach. We got to the altar. The minister went through the readings. Ethan kept leaning in, whispering sweet, shallow nothings. Almost there, my love. Almost rich. I just smiled serenely. Then came the moment. The question. I gave Leo the nod. The church went dark. The screen lit up. The title flashed. Ethan Wexler, Fraudulent Diversification and Debt Structure. The second slide popped up. It was the text exchange with Chloe. A huge photo of Chloe in her pink bridesmaid dress. The text read, "The yacht by Tuesday." Chloe saw it. She shrieked, covered her face, and bolted out the side door. Ethan turned into a wild animal. He tried to grab the minister's microphone. I was faster. I held the mic close. Ethan tried to use my family's legacy, I said, my voice cold and loud. He intended to commit financial fraud. He intended to steal almost $1 million. Ethan yelled, "You bitch! This is libel. I'll sue you into the ground." I laughed, a real genuine laugh of pure victory. I already beat you to it. Leo hit the next slide. It showed the pre-signed annulment request. It was filed and processed moments before the ceremony started. The marriage was dead on arrival. This marriage is legally annulled, I announced. It never existed. I refused to let his criminal debt become my family's problem. Ethan grabbed my arm. His grip was painful. You think you won. Where is the money, May? The money. I need the money. I looked him in the eye. You are not receiving 1 cent. My father never wired the gift. We only transferred to legal spouses, which you are not. I signaled to the back. 2 very large, very well-dressed men in dark suits walked down the aisle. They were not wedding guests. They were private security, hired by Leo. Gentlemen, I directed them. Ethan Wexler is committing assault and trespassing on private property. He is no longer part of this event. Please escort him to the parking lot. His creditors are waiting for him there. Ethan struggled and screamed. He shouted obscenities at me. He was dragged past the horrified guests. My father just stood next to me. He looked shocked, but fiercely proud. The confrontation was perfect. Surgical. Complete. The church doors slammed shut behind Ethan. The sound echoed the finality. The room remained silent for a full minute. Then my father stepped forward. He took the mic from me. My daughter, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She protected this family's honor. The reception is now an annulment celebration. The champagne is still chilled. Let us toast to her intelligence and her future. The change was instantaneous. The shame vanished. The gasps turned into applause. My family rallied instantly. The guests started cheering for me. My face was not ruined. It was elevated. I had taken down the enemy with cold corporate precision. I was the hero. Ethan was in deep trouble. Leo had coordinated with the debt collectors. They didn't want my family's money. They wanted Ethan. They met him in the parking lot. I heard later that he had a very painful conversation. He was facing immediate legal action for fraud and an even more immediate need to pay off his loans. Chloe was a footnote. She lost her job and her reputation. Nobody wanted to network with a failed accomplice. My mother cried, but they were tears of relief. She realized that status was not about the look of the man, but the character. She hugged me tight. She finally saw me as a partner, not just a daughter. I filed the annulment paperwork the next morning. It was cleaner than a divorce. It cost me nothing but a ruined satin sash. The biggest victory? The honeymoon. I had planned a lavish 2-week trip to the Maldives. All prepaid, non-refundable. Ethan was supposed to come. I went alone. I spent 2 weeks on the beach. I finished the final chapter of my dissertation. I sipped expensive champagne. I realized I was not a victim of circumstance. I was an architect. I designed my life. I came back to the city. I was lighter. I was free. I defended my PhD successfully 3 months later. I got the job I wanted. I never looked back. Sometimes I see Ethan working as a waiter downtown. He tries to avoid eye contact. He looks defeated. He looks small. He is exactly where he belongs, and I get to smile. I designed the perfect wedding. It was perfect because the marriage never happened.